Karen's garden hose wasn't just washing away chalk, it was erasing a town's fragile heart. Nobody expected her to snap like that. Not over a kid's drawing, not in broad daylight. The neighborhood of Willow Creek had always been a quiet place, where kids rode bikes until the streetlights flickered on and neighbors traded small talk over picket fences. But that evening, the air was thick with something uglier than the usual summer heat. It was rage, betrayal, and a grief nobody could name. Karen, 48, was the kind of woman who kept her lawn pristine and her opinions sharper than a razor. She'd moved to Willow Creek 5 years ago, after a messy divorce, and made it clear she didn't care for the town's cozy charm. To her, the chalk drawings that littered the sidewalk, stars, hopscotch grids, and cartoonish animals were nothing but clutter. "It's my property line," she'd mutter, scrubbing at the colorful streaks with a vengeance. But this time, she'd gone too far. The drawing she attacked wasn't just art. It was 10-year-old Lily's tribute to her mother, Sarah, a firefighter who died 6 months ago, saving 3 families from a blazing apartment complex. Lily had spent hours on that sidewalk, her small hands smudged with red and yellow chalk as she sketched her mom in her firefighting gear, flames swirling around her like a halo. Her older brother, Ethan, 15, had helped with the outlines, his jaw tight as he fought back tears. The drawing was their anchor, a way to keep Sarah's memory alive when the world felt like it was moving on without her. Neighbors stopped by to admire it, leaving flowers or notes tucked into the cracks of the pavement. It was more than art, it was a shrine. Karen saw it differently. To her, it was an eyesore, a garish explosion of color creeping too close to her perfectly edged lawn. That afternoon, she'd stormed out with her hose, spraying the chalk into a muddy blur. Lily's scream had pierced the air first, raw and desperate, drawing Ethan from the house. By the time neighbors spilled out of their homes, Karen was shouting, "This is my sidewalk. I don't care who drew it." Lily sobbed, clutching a piece of chalk like a lifeline, while Ethan stepped between her and Karen, his voice low but shaking with fury. "That was our mom," he said, each word a blade. "She died for this town." The crowd grew old, Mrs. Carter with her walker, the young couple from down the street, even the mailman who'd stopped mid-route. They formed a loose semicircle, their murmurs turning to shouts. "Leave the kids alone," someone yelled. Karen didn't back down. She doubled down, her voice rising. "I'm sick of this sob story. It's just chalk. Draw it somewhere else." The words hit like a slap. Lily's sobs turned silent, her small body trembling. Ethan's fist clenched, and for a moment, it looked like he might lunge. The tension was a live wire, sparking in the humid air. Nobody knew Sarah's story better than Willow Creek. She'd been one of their own, a single mom who joined the fire department after Ethan was born, determined to give her kids a better life. She'd been fearless, running into flames while others ran out. The fire last winter had been her last. She carried a toddler to safety, then gone back for the family's grandmother. The roof collapsed before she could get out. The town had mourned her with vigils, a plaque at the fire station, and endless casseroles for Lily and Ethan, who now lived with their overworked aunt, Maria. But Karen hadn't been at the vigils. She didn't eat casseroles. She'd made it clear she didn't care for heroes or the mess they left behind. As the confrontation escalated, Maria pushed through the crowd, her nurse's scrubs still stained from a long shift. Her eyes locked on Karen, then the ruined drawing, and her face crumpled. "You had no right," she said, her voice breaking. That was all they had left of her. Karen scoffed, tossing the hose aside. "It's my property. I don't owe anyone an apology." The crowd erupted, voices overlapping in a chaotic wave. Someone threw a plastic cup, missing Karen by inches. Ethan grabbed Lily's hand, pulling her back, but his eyes never left Karen's. "You're not human," he spat. The scene was chaos, but it wasn't just about the drawing. It was about a town fractured by loss, about a woman who'd chosen to lash out instead of heal, about two kids who'd lost their mother and now their small act of remembrance. Missing 'em, Carter, leaning on her walker, started chanting Sarah's name, and others joined in, a low, defiant rhythm. Karen's face twitched, her confidence cracking. For the first time, she looked small, cornered. She turned to go inside, but Ethan's voice stopped her. "You can wash it away," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "but you can't erase her." The standoff stretched on, the crowd's anger simmering, Lily's quiet sobs cutting through the noise. Maria knelt beside her, whispering something, but Lily wouldn't look up. The chalk was gone, smeared into a gray puddle, but the memory of Sarah burned brighter than ever. Neighbors started picking up pieces of chalk from the ground, some kneeling to redraw the firefighter's silhouette. It was an act of defiance, a refusal to let Karen win. But the victory, if it could be called that, felt hollow. The damage was done. Karen retreated into her house, slamming the door. The crowd lingered, unsure whether to cheer or mourn. Ethan and Lily stayed by the sidewalk, staring at the mess where their mother's image had been. Maria pulled them close, but their eyes were distant, lost in a grief that no amount of chalk could fix. The town would talk about this for weeks: Karen's cruelty, the kids' resilience, the drawing that had become a battleground. But beneath the gossip, something deeper festered: a question of how far pain could push people, and whether forgiveness was even possible. As night fell, a few neighbors stayed to clean up, sweeping away the last traces of chalk. Someone nailed a small wooden sign to the fence, scribbled with the words, "Her mom died saving us." It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep Sarah's memory alive, at least for now. The crowd thinned, leaving Ethan and Lily with Maria, their silhouettes small against the darkening sky. The fight was over, but the war inside them had only begun. The days after the confrontation felt like a held breath in Willow Creek. The neighborhood, once knitted together by shared barbecues and borrowed lawnmowers, now buzzed with whispers and sidelong glances. Karen's house stood silent, curtains drawn, her car unmoved in the driveway. Some said she was ashamed, others swore she was plotting her next move. For Ethan and Lily, the world had shifted. The sidewalk, once their canvas, felt like a graveyard. Yet the town refused to let Sarah's memory fade. By morning, new chalk drawings had sprouted: fire trucks, helmets, and flames spreading across driveways and curbs. A quiet rebellion against Karen's erasure. Ethan, though, couldn't shake the image of that hose, the water blasting away his mother's face. At night, he lay awake, replaying the moment he'd almost swung at Karen. He was 15, all wiry limbs and bottled up rage. But he'd held back for Lily. She was the one who worried him most. Lily hadn't spoken much since that day, her chatter replaced by a silence that scared Maria. The 10-year-old clutched her chalk stubs like talismans, but she wouldn't draw. "What's the point?" she'd whispered once, her voice flat. "It'll just get washed away." Maria, stretched thin between hospital shifts and parenting two grieving kids, tried to hold them together. She'd moved them into her small apartment after Sarah's death, trading her quiet life for one of constant motion. She cooked dinners nobody ate, checked homework nobody cared about, and fielded calls from neighbors offering sympathy or gossip. Karen's always been cold. "Mrs." Carter told her over coffee. "But this, it's evil." Maria nodded, but she wasn't so sure. She'd seen Karen at the grocery store once, her cart filled with single-serve meals, her eyes tired. Something was broken in her, too. The town's anger found a new outlet a week later when someone spray-painted shame across Karen's garage door. The word, in dripping red letters, drew gasps and grim nods from passers-by. Ethan saw it on his way to school and felt a flicker of satisfaction, quickly swallowed by guilt. He didn't want to be the kind of person who cheered vandalism, but he couldn't forgive her either. Lily, walking beside him, stared at the word and said, "Mom would have hated this." Ethan didn't reply. He wasn't sure what Sarah would have wanted anymore. Karen, meanwhile, hadn't left her house since the incident. Inside, she sat at her kitchen table, staring at a bottle of wine she hadn't opened. She wasn't a monster, no matter what the neighbors thought. She'd moved to Willow Creek to escape her ex-husband's lies, the city's noise, her own regrets. The chalk drawings had felt like an invasion, a reminder that she'd never belong. But she hadn't known about Sarah. Not really. She'd heard the stories, a heroic firefighter, a tragic fire, but they were just noise until that day. Now, the weight of what she'd done pressed against her chest. She wanted to apologize, but the words felt hollow, and the town's hatred was a wall she couldn't climb. The breaking point came at a town meeting, called to address community tensions. The fire station's meeting room was packed, folding chairs creaking under the weight of neighbors, firefighters, and even a local reporter. Ethan and Lily sat in the back with Maria, Lily clutching a firefighter figurine. The fire chief, a burly man named Tom, opened the meeting, his voice heavy. "This isn't just about a drawing," he said. "It's about what we owe each other." He looked at Karen, who'd shown up against her better judgment, sitting alone in the front row. Her face was pale, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The room erupted when Tom opened the floor. "Mrs. Carter stood first, her walker wobbling. "Karen disrespected a hero," she shouted, and the crowd roared agreement. A young father followed, his voice shaking. "My kids were in that fire Sarah saved them from. That drawing was for her." Ethan's throat tightened as he listened, his hand finding Lily's. She squeezed back, her eyes fixed on the floor. Karen didn't speak, didn't move, but her shoulders hunched as if each word were a stone. Then Maria stood. The room quieted. "I'm not here to defend Karen," she said, her voice steady but raw. "What she did was wrong. But this town's turning into something Sarah wouldn't recognize. She didn't save people for plaques or drawings. She did it because it was right. Maybe we should try that." The words hung in the air, sharp and uncomfortable. Ethan felt a pang of betrayal. How could Maria take Karen's side? But Lily looked up, her eyes searching Maria's face. Karen finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "I didn't know," she said. "I didn't know it was about her." The room bristled, but she pressed on. "I'm sorry. I can't undo it, but I'm sorry." It wasn't enough, not for Ethan, not for the crowd, but it was something. Lily whispered, "She doesn't mean it," and Ethan nodded, though he wasn't sure. The meeting ended in a stalemate, with no resolution, only the promise of more meetings, more words. Days turned to weeks, and Willow Creek tried to heal. The chalk drawings multiplied, a colorful defiance that spread to every sidewalk. Ethan and Lily joined in, sketching a new tribute to Sarah, a fire truck with her badge number, 214 in bold red. But the joy wasn't there. Lily's lines were shaky, her heart elsewhere. Ethan watched her, his own anger fading into something heavier, resignation. Karen's apology hadn't fixed anything. The town's love for Sarah couldn't bring her back, and the shame on Karen's garage stayed, fading but never gone. The final blow came quietly. Maria found a letter in the mailbox. No return address. Inside was a check for $5,000 made out to Lily and Ethan, with a note. "For your loss, I'm sorry." It was Karen's handwriting, unmistakable from the HOA notices she used to pin to mailboxes. Maria showed it to the kids, expecting relief, maybe gratitude. Instead, Ethan tore it up, his hands shaking. "She thinks money fixes FaceTime conversation ended."